Okay, we are recording. Welcome so much, Rosia. Okay, so I've been wanting to talk to you more about this for a long time. I know that you are a water healing artist, and can you start by letting us know more what that is? Like, what do you actually do?
Yeah. So the water, I use water as a medium for healing. And water for me has been such a teacher. It has a particular depth that we will get into. But basically, what I do so that people can understand is I take people in body temperature water. You're floating, looking up, and you're essentially in a state of surrender. And I am gently manipulating your body and rocking your body. And so what that does is it takes you back into a regressive state as with the movements that we all had when we were inside the womb. So it essentially takes you back into that primordial state of what it felt like when we were held inside the womb of our mother. And so because we're using body temperature, the nervous system is able to relax. Your body enters into a parasympathetic state, and so there's a lot that gets unlocked through that process. But just in a nutshell, that's what I do, and there's so many other layers that go into that work.
Wow. Okay, cool. Okay, so now how did you get into this? Here we go.
So it's an interesting story. I always say that the water chose me, and by default, I had to choose it because it was something that I was not searching for, I was not looking for. I embarked on a journey of self discovery when I was back in 2011, and to make the long story short, I was in a school where I was in a bout of silence for 50 days. And in that process, I was discovering a lot of the trauma that I had experienced growing up and started rediscovering, I think, aspects of myself that I never had the tools nor the support to look at, right? And so memories from 10 years old till I was in utero, I started recalling. And it was also through that process that I was able to also enter altered states of consciousness. And I can also go into what that means, but essentially it was discovering a lot of the pain that I had, the memories that were repressed. And by default, as I was opening up a lot of those old wounds, I was getting a lot of visions around water and birth.
Okay.
And I thought, great, I have a lot of friends back at home who are midwives or studying to be midwives. I was already in that world. And I said, well, maybe my path is midwifery. If I'm getting visions that I'm going to be taking people in birth in water, then that's what it's going to be.
Whoa.
Little did I know, and it's 9 months after coming out of that process, literally 9 months, I came across the water path. And I did my first training without knowing what it was about. I just got pulled. I got called. I was living in Oaxaca, in Puerto Escondido, surfer town in the Pacific coast. And I just remember this Colombian woman that had walked up to the restaurant where I was working. She said, hey, there's a course happening. And I said, I don't know what I need to do, but I'm going to be there. And I took my first course. Ever since
So who?
then, yeah,
Okay. Who was teaching the course?
it was a Argentinian German couple that was teaching the course at that time. And they were traveling and teaching courses. And so that was the introduction to one of the techniques that I do in water.
Okay.
Um,
And
so
what is the technique called?
this one is called aguajara.
It's
So
called what?
aguajara,
Awahara. Okay.
aguajara. So I'm going to explain just so that people that are interested in the water world, the mother of the water practices comes from Watsu, and Watsu comes from Shatsu applied in water. So water, Shatsu, Watsu. And it
Okay.
was actually created in California by Harold Dahl, who I got the immense privilege to learn from, and just recently passed away. So from there, he developed that technique in the 80s, and then all these other forms of water or techniques came out of that essentially that mother form.
Okay.
People have been doing different techniques from there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're randomly in Puerto Escondido at a restaurant and you hear about a water class.
I'm working, I am traveling, I'm on this, literally, I'm on this journey. I had bought a one-way ticket. I had no idea, like my life at that point, I had essentially let go of my life in LA, and I knew that it was a calling that I had. I just didn't know what it was going to look like. And it
Mhm.
was based on a dream that woke me up that said, you have to leave everything here. And within a matter of weeks, my life started spiraling, ended up following the Mayan route down to Guatemala, was in bouts of silence for 50 days, started having all these visions. And then literally 9 months later, as I'm living in this little surfer town, working my way through, this woman says, hey, there's a course here. And I said, yes, of course, without knowing absolutely anything about it. And as soon as I started the course, I said, this is a direct doorway. This is a direct path to take people into depths of healing that I was also able to witness at that point through my 50 days of silence. Because the states that I was able to get to when I was in silence, I realized that water took people immediately there.
Ooh.
Yeah. And there's a lot there. And so, yes, this is the reason why I'm immensely passionate about water, but there's so much depth to it. There's so many different angles to be applied to this work, but it's essentially deep states of meditation that you take people through, immense states of meditation, because you could imagine being in a bout of silence for 50 days.
I know. That's so extreme.
I mean, I'm
Like
making a
that's
comparison.
literally very like it's time occupying, right? Compared to you said pretty immediately just going into water was able to get people into that same place. Okay, wait, I want to ask you so many questions, but when you said that, it actually relates to something about why I work with steam, which is that people can help their menstrual cycles and have healthy menstrual cycles and get out of pain by drinking the right teas, eating right, and exercising correctly. Okay.
Mhm.
So, like nutrition, fitness, resting at the right time, resting during the period, and then teas and herbs and stuff like that, right? And that is so time consuming and takes so many changes. Okay. But literally, when people steam, they can have the same results just after one steam session. Then it would take them months of implementing these changes and being, like more strict with, these lifestyle choices.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe that's why I work with steam, because originally my company was chick food, where I wanted to give women herbal teas. And it's like, you got to drink this herbal tea during this time of the month and this one during this time of the month and da 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 da. And it's so complex and it's so time consuming compared to if they do one vaginal steam session and then they have sometimes even more results than when they implement all of these changes. And I actually believe that's why steaming is becoming so popular, because it's just so easy to do without needing to change your diet or without needing to exercise, right? So anyway, so that's so interesting that you said like 50 days of silence versus floating in water, like
Thread.
once.
This is the thread, and this is the reason why when I came, I had been doing steaming for some time, but then I came back to the States and I saw the work that you were doing. I was also pulled into that work, and I said,
Right.
doing something incredible because you're using water as a medium. And if we can understand water as a medium, what it does, right, and the catalyzing impact that it has, not only on our physical bodies but on our consciousness, because water, it's a living element. It's we gestate from, I mean, we come from liquid form, from the fluids of our parents. We gestate in the fluid of the amniotic fluid of our mother. We're birthed into this life, and we look at what is the element that mostly covers this earth. It's water. what
Mm.
is what is the element that is also encompassing this earth? It's water in another form. It's just another dimension of water. We're surrounded by
Okay.
air and clouds and all of that, so we're encompassed by encompassed by water all the time, and we're majority that. So if
Okay.
we look at the relationship of those two things, and we see the symbolic impact or the symbolic representation of water, this is the reason why your work is so important and why it's growing right now immensely, because there's a need. One philosophy I have is, in our human evolution, we've gone through different elements of healing and transformation and evolution. We've used earth medicine for a long time. We've used fire medicines for a long time. We've used air. The air element is the development of therapy and psychotherapy and talk therapy. And now the water is coming in another form to help us rebirth and wind everything together so that we can create a new consciousness.
Whoa. Okay, tell me more.
If we look at what water does, right, even the work of epigenetics, and this is again another thread of work that I love linking into what I do with the water, and even with vaginal steaming, is that if we look at water as an element that is connected to the unconscious, connected to the subconscious, connected to the feminine, connected to the waters and the ebbs and flows of life, it's the connector of land masses. If we understand, and I'll bring up the work of the Japanese scientist Emoto. Have you ever looked into his work or know what he did?
I'm familiar with it. Yeah,
Okay.
but we should talk about it. Yeah.
I'll share a little bit more. So Japanese scientists started basically looking at the science of water and basically capturing imprints of what intention does, what emotion or mental thoughts, what impact it has on the water. So if we have more positive emotions, then it's going to change the molecular structure of the water in a more harmonious, I guess in more harmonious structures, versus if we have negative vibrations or negative intentions towards the water, then it's also going to change the molecular structure of the water. So if we understand that water is able to receive information based on the energy imprint that we're giving it, and it adapts to its environment, then the work of epigenetics is deeply connected here. Because if we're all water and we're gestating in water, what happens in the womb of our mothers, environmentally, emotionally, is creating imprints, and we're taking that in.
Okay.
So that's where a lot of these patternings, familial, ancestral patternings, end up getting passed down through us, because it's embedded in the blood and in the waters of our family systems. And so a lot of times, why, again, I'm going to relate it to vaginal steaming, and why vaginal steaming is so powerful, is that based on the trajectory of the life that we've come into, right? If we've had traumatic experiences, our mother has had traumatic experiences, her mother as well. There's an imprint because of the waters, the water imprints based on the environment, that has impacted the way that we relate to our bodies.
Okay.
And we see that there's disconnection based on trauma and things like that, then there's going to be a lot of issues with our second brain, because for us, that's our second brain. Our womb is our second brain. So vaginal steaming is an opportunity to use water to say, let me reprint this story. Let me say something different. Let me use the imprints of these plants, right? To say, let me change the story as it moves through my body on a physical level. The other layers are getting worked, whether people know it or not, or whether they're working through it consciously or not. But on the physical level, that's what it's doing. It's alchemizing healing inside of the womb via water.
Okay, so now water, if the body has these imprints and these messages, and this molecular structure based on the water that was transferred to us in the womb, right? Then how does it work? How does water, whether that's floating or using vaginal steam, how does it then change that imprint? Do you know what I mean? Like, how does that aspect of it work?
Yeah. So again, remember that we're majority water.
Okay.
So that's why in a lot of sacred texts, or even in, I think, a lot of religious dogma, they say, bless your neighbor, don't curse them. Because the blessing, you're imprinting the body, the water of that person. You're
Mm-hmm.
imprinting in the air, which is water as well,
Mm-hmm.
what that intention is.
Okay.
And so then that magnetizes, that it's energetic. And this is something that we don't tangibly see. But even with steaming, right, you have the ability to, whether you're conscious about it or not, water already working in conjunction with the herbs is creating another synergy that is moving with the steam up into the uterus and transferring or moving energy and circulation so that it can open up what is there, or what needs to be unlocked and unblocked. Then other processes can come into play. But just on the physical level, it's a gem. It's a gem what is happening with steaming.
Yeah.
Because this is how water is working through our system.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, thank you for your work. Thank you for what you're doing. And I feel that there's a resonance in the world right now, and there's a need for this. It's an opportunity for us to reconnect, to feel again what is happening there, instead of being disassociated from that part that has been so elemental in our power, based on what has happened within this patriarchal system that we've lived in for such a long time. And that's why the shift that I feel like we're all going through, and collectively, it's an opportunity. And I feel like, again, this is the water coming through again to say it's a new time, it's a rebirth. How are we going to rebirth this whole situation?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, Rocio. like your depth of understanding about water is just like there are so many layers. Like I have like 50 questions from like what you just said. Okay. Okay.
Ask away.
Okay. Okay. I'll just go basic.
Yeah.
What's epigenetics?
So epigenetics is essentially the study of where we come, what has been the psychological somatic imprint that has happened from the time that we were in utero. Some say that it's even before that, conception. And they can tie it back to what we call ancestral emotional patterning as well. So it's like looking at what were the environmental factors that we have come into that have created this physiological, psychological effect in consciousness and in us, that have that essentially are just imprints that we continue to project onto the world.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Okay, so now what does the field of epigenetics understand the importance of water when it comes to that transference, or is that the part that is that your level of understanding?
I think I haven't heard it talked about explicitly in relationship to water.
This is you putting it together. Okay.
It's just my form of merging those two, but they do talk a lot about the amniotic imprinting that happens, right? And so of course, like for me, it's
Amniotic imprinting.
that it's the way that emotions are held in our mother's womb.
Yeah.
Work with Gabor Mate. If you follow his work, he talks a lot about this. Anna Verwal, I had the opportunity to meet with her, and just recently when I went to Holland, I was there with her, and she talks a lot about epigenetics, and she studied natal psychology, and she's doing an amazing work around imprinting and birth. So
okay. So now, when somebody, let's go to like the session that you do where you have somebody floating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's two things I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is what the stages you went through when you were in silence in 50 days, and what you were able to to go through in a water session? And you don't have to make it personal if you don't want to, but what is it that you saw that was similar about those two different processes?
Yeah.
And like what it was that water was able to do,
Yeah.
that also silence was able to do. Like how did and I know this might be a little bit of a difficult, but I'm really like, I like to understand things, Rocio. Like,
Okay, I'll try to break it down as much as possible. So this particular, I'll talk about what the process is with this particular school. This particular school comes from, basically we study the Kabbalah, but it also has ancient connections to Egypt. And there's a fascinating story with Chati, who created this school in Guatemala. But it was through a lot of guidance that she was able to create a process and being able to finally guide people to get to the point where they can be in silence for 50 days. And what happens during that time, and again, everyone's experience is unique and different, and I'll talk about mine specifically because that's all I know. First of all, I had no idea what I was about to embark on. I had no idea what was going to happen. I just knew I needed to go through this process. And when you're not engaged in stimulation, all you can do is go inward. You're not getting pulled by the outside world or, by a phone or a conversation outside of you, where you have to be in relationship to or be responsible to, right? And so the only thing that you are responsible for and that you're responding is to what is happening inside of you. And I remember the first 10 days were a challenge, being able to shut down my mind and feeling levels of anxiety. And then there was a moment where it was all these memories, like I said, that I had completely forgotten, started to surface. And I'll share my story. So I had experienced sexual abuse at the age of 3, 7, and 10. So as a way of protecting myself, a lot of those memories I blocked growing up. I couldn't remember from 10 and younger. I could remember a couple things, but not in detail what was happening in my life. And it was during that process that a lot of those memories started to come back. And I realized that they needed to come back because I needed to heal them. I needed to have a different relationship to them. And as I went through that, of course, there's a lot of moments where there's deep sadness and you start to hear, I would say, different identities within you or different voices. And you start to hear places within you that have been hurt and that are, coming in and saying, you shouldn't be doing that, or it'll sabotage certain situations. All these different types of identities, I was able to kind of like give them a name or recognize them because I was in such an insular state. But what ended up happening throughout the process was just, it wasn't painful the whole time. There were moments where I started getting opportunities to see something that was beyond form, if that makes any sense. I was able to see things that were and this is where a lot of people talk about the altered states of consciousness, is that you're able to tap into other dimensions that are not necessarily logical, and that can be beyond time and space. So it can be past or it can be future. And for me, there was a lot of experiences where it was future. And I didn't know at the time what it was until my life started moving forward and I started seeing all those revelations.
Wow.
So why they say that Jesus was in the cave for 40 days, right? And that's where it was his stage, or his stage of enlightenment, was because he was in such an insular state in the cave that he came back with this light that he had to share with the world. There's a science behind that. So when you're able to take yourself in a state of in isolation, your body naturally releases DMT. So DMT is it's a substance that is also found in other hallucinogenic plants that take you into these altered states.
Wow.
But naturally, you, by being in that state, you secrete the DMT in your body and you get into those altered states, like, you know, what people would experience with mushrooms or things like that. I still had no idea what that state was. The teacher wouldn't necessarily mention that that would specifically happen. She would guide us through the process and engage with us and see where we were at. But I remember the day, I think it was like 5 days before I came out of silence, that I remember going into the state where I was like completely in an altered state and immense bliss, and then feeling the like coming back into my body and feeling the crash of like coming back into this reality. So it was experiencing these polarities, which is sometimes what happens with hallucinogenics, that it takes you into other spaces where, again, time and space do not exist. It's consciousness being open and tapped into something else. So that was my experience of experiencing essentially opening up what I felt was what was locked in my nervous system, the trauma, the memories that were locked there, that I had to reframe, had to develop a different relationship to, that was not easy, and that I'm still working through in my life right now. But it also gave me the opportunity to see what are the other potentials that are beyond what I think is possible. And again, this process for me was the foundation of what I'm doing now. It set the tone. It gave me an experience that would continue revealing itself so that I can trust in something that was not necessarily logical or tangible, because water is also that. It's not logical or fully tangible.
You can't hold it. It's like
No. Yeah. No.
Everybody's tried as a little kid. You just can't.
Yeah, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. So I feel like that was the foundation for the work that I would end up doing. And like I said, that's where I started getting all these visions and dreams. And then 9 months later, I came across the water path. And ever since then, I've been training in different parts of the world to focus on this work. But what happens in the water, like even the first experience that I was, when I was in this training, and I remember one of the teachers took me and did the first session for me, I was blown away. Like I immediately went back into a state back in the womb with my mother. And I remember I said, oh, I'm in the uterus of my mother right now. I'm remembering what this is like. And there was moments that felt chaotic, and there was moments that felt immensely blissful, and where I felt her nourishing me. But it was a whole experience, a whole journey that took me into various depths of dimensions. And that's why I relate this work to the experience that I had with meditation and silence, because it took me there and I had something to compare it to.
Okay.
Versus it's just an experience and I can't make sense of it. I had something to give me feedback from. And that's why when I work with people, you know, you were talking about steam, and sometimes just one person can steam for one time and it changes everything for them, right? It's the same thing even with the sessions that I do. One session can catalyze so much for you. You don't need that much, but you just need the opportunity to go into that silence and that depth to extrapolate what is there and what is needed for you to move forward. And what's beautiful about water is that it's all encompassing, because it takes you deep into the sensory experience. Once your ears are underwater, the external reality doesn't exist. You go inward. And also when you're floating, it's different. People always tell me, well, you know, I'm a swimmer, or I do all this type of, I love water sports, or
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. People go in the water all the time. So
this is the difference.
Okay.
There's a huge difference. It's different when you're, for example, swimming. There's intention, attention, and effort, right? So yes, your body is buoyant, but you're still exerting effort. It's different when, for example, in a process with a water healing session, you are floating in surrender to someone else. and you're not in charge of doing anything. And so that level of surrender allows your nervous system to say, okay, I can really dive deep in myself, and I can allow my nervous system to relax because someone is caring for me. So it's like going back into the state where we were in the womb, where we were cared for on some level. That wasn't the experience with everybody, right? But for the most part, like, that was the experience of being cared by somebody else. And so once you're able to float, you're no longer feeling compression. So now this is another layer to the work. If your body is no longer feeling compression and you're completely involved with the water, and you're in the water, then there's a part of the brain that is no longer paying attention to compression. So then it's able to relax and let go even further. So that's the reason why going into the water, you can enter deeper states of meditation and relaxation, because that part of the brain is finally able to let go. So you're able to enter a parasympathetic state a lot quicker. So there's no compression.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going. Go ahead, please go ahead. I just have to write something down real quick. I'm taking notes, Rocio. This is incredible. Okay.
So your body is able to finally let go and release because you're entering a parasympathetic state. Not everyone enters it as quickly as other people. Depends on what your process is as well. But essentially, when your body is able to at least reach a level of the parasympathetic state, then what ends up happening with the nervous system, it starts to unwind, right? And the moment that it unwinds, it starts to unlock the memory that it's there. So now we're working with the nervous system being open, or at least feeling the support to be open and to let go. And this is where it's connected to the womb as well. There's mobility of all the nerves and the pelvis in water in a way that you can't really move when you're on land. So now you're moving the body in that way. You're unlocking a lot of the contraction that is being felt there. And that's the reason why a lot of people feel immense emotions when they're doing a session with water. And it depends on each person. Some people remember memories that were, extremely painful from childhood. Some people remember their birth experience. Some people remember memories when they were in the womb. Other people are, just remember or get visions of what their life is heading towards, or they get a vision of a creative project. There's so much that gets unveiled for people via this experience. But essentially, it's what's getting unlocked through the nervous system, because it's not feeling compression, and because there's trust. And when you're in trust, you can let go, right? And how many spaces can our bodies fully be in trust? Especially when we live in environments that are, people are in hypervigilance for whatever reason, or you've experienced hypervigilance in your childhood, and that's become the pattern in your life, or you come from a family system that has, experienced a lot of violence or insecurity. Then again, looking at the patterns or the effects of epigenetics, right? This gets locked into you. And so then you respond into the world via that projection. And you're not even aware that that's what's happening. So that's why healing work or modalities that support unlocking the patterns and allowing the body, because it's really about us trusting and going back into the body so that it can re-regulate itself. Our mind will never do that. We really have to be in surrender to our body. And if we can surrender to the body, then we can allow the body to work in the way that it needs to, versus feeling in contraction based on the experiences that we've had. And again, vaginal steaming is a great opportunity to awaken what has been locked in the uterus for such a long time. And then to allow somebody to say, oh, I could feel again, or there's something was there that was not, that I was not aware of, or I have endometriosis because of, many of these other reasons, but it doesn't, at that point, it doesn't fully matter. What matters is that you're healing it. And this is a quick way with vaginal steaming to be able to get there. If you want to continue going through the process of the why, that's important to not recreate the story. But the fact that it's healing and it's the body is knowing what to do and you're trusting the body to do that. That's what matters.
And that already changes what gets imprinted in what you communicate, right? In what your body then communicates to the next life that it creates, right?
And that's why you advocate for women that are trying to get pregnant. Heal your uterus first. Get your menses straight. Because that's going to be the house that you're going to be welcoming a new life through. You set the trajectory in a different way when you do it that way. That's why your work is so important.
When you talk about my work, you throw me so far off because I am like still just so fascinated by your work. So I want to just knock the ball back into your court. Like, okay. Okay, so you learned about vaginal steaming when? Before or after the silence and this year long? Okay, you keep on mentioning the 9 months. So clearly you went through your own, like water took you through a whole new, like almost like in utero experience that then birthed you into this field, right? That's what I hear from what you're saying. When did you learn about vaginal steaming? Before or after?
Before. I had always been involved with circles here in LA. A lot of the people that you know as well. So I had been doing, and I had learned a lot of different modalities and techniques already. So there was like things in my belt already. However,
dude, yeah, in LA, like specifically, like, I don't know, the Chicana healing circle, like everybody knows about steaming. It is so cool.
Yeah.
So did you learn from, okay, so I know Raquel was mentioning that she learned from Patty.
Yeah, I didn't learn from Patty. I learned from somebody else.
Okay, got you.
Yeah. But then, of course, we're all connected to each other.
Yeah.
We're being with each other and doing women's circles for a long time. So
cool. So it came onto the LA scene. Very specifically, people who are health conscious were aware of it, were doing it. So you had learned about it.
Yeah, since I was maybe like 20 years old.
Okay. Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. But it wasn't a practice that I was doing all the time. I knew of it. I knew how to do it. But it wasn't like a part of my life. And it wasn't until I came back and I did the training with you that I was like, oh, this is definitely going to be part of my life. And I'm going to continue using it and sharing it because again, for me, it was the water connection because I already had gone through this whole experience of understanding the depth of it. So.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. So when it comes to steam, how do you think that compares to, so the steam is, how does it compare to you, like to the impact that it's able to have when you have somebody floating in the water, they go into a parasympathetic state, right? Now with the steam, that wouldn't always be the case, right? Because somebody could be like watching TV while they're doing it, or like talking on the phone, right? So their whole body isn't under surrender, and yet we still know that the water ends up having an impact, right? How what are your observations as far as that goes?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like so many people have different ways of engaging with steam and using it as a practice. And I don't think there's a right way. Yeah, there's people that could be sitting down and watching TV and it's still going to have an effect, right? Like water will do its thing no matter what. Like it's going to do its thing.
Right. Yeah. Water does its thing.
Yeah, it does. But I do feel that intention is everything, right? And when we're aware and we're engaging our senses and our consciousness with what we're doing, then it has a different effect, right?
Yeah.
Relating it back to the conversation that we were having earlier around, okay, we're encompassed in this world that is essentially a water bubble, right? And so when and relating the work of Emoto, if you are saying something negative, you're creating that imprint, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about intentionality. If you set an intention, you're potentially, like, you're essentially imprinting and igniting that based on the intention that you're setting. So for me, it's using steam can be immensely catalyzing. I mean, obviously not in the same way that a water session is, but it still could bring up so much for people. And I've seen it happen time and time again. It depends on how the spaces it's curated and what the intention is being set. When you're setting that intention with the water and the steam is moving, right, and going up. And again, as feminine bodies, energy wants to go downward. That's why if you look at most sacred symbolism of the female body or the feminine energy, it's earth. It's moving downward. It's a spiral to the earth. What steam is doing is, because we're constantly in compression and connected to the earth, this is why the feminine energy understands the magnitude of protecting our environment, because we're connected to the earth, right? But what steam does is it circulates, or it engages, again, the water and the heat, creating the steam, creating circulation upward. So if you're engaging with circulation upward, what you're doing is also engaging other parts of the organs and circulation up into the head. That's the reason why steam is so powerful, also for the digestive tract, for the vagus nerve, right? It has a huge effect on the vagus nerve. And and your body could enter a parasympathetic state. And if your body can enter a parasympathetic state, again, you have such an opportunity to rewire and heal what is locked there. That's the reason why when you steam at night, right, it's a lot, you enter a state of relaxation. You're
Right.
so open,
Right.
at that point.
So can you talk about the connection between the vagus nerve and a parasympathetic state? Can we also talk about what a parasympathetic state is?
Yeah, so a parasympathetic state is essentially the state, it's a deeper state of relaxation. It's when your nervous system is able to say, okay, I'm safe. I'm in a neutral state. The nervous system is sending information to the brain via the senses to be able to get into that state or not, right? So the vagus nerve is connected to the parasympathetic state, because the vagus nerve is the one that is communicating. Can we go into a parasympathetic state, or could we not?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if there's circulation and there's heat and there's relaxation, the vagus nerve is receiving all those sensors, sending it to the brain, reducing oxygen in the body so that the body can enter a parasympathetic state.
Okay.
And so, yeah, at that point, then so much could happen there. So much. This is what I call an inner silence. It's an inner silent state, because you're no longer stimulated and in response mode.
Yeah. And so in the work that you do, when you're working and doing a session with somebody, this is the state that you work on, that you use water to get somebody to, okay? And according to you, this can be used through full submission, and then also in a different way, using the steam also can possibly get somebody into that state, right? And then once the person gets into that state, that's where you say their nervous system unwinds and unlocks. And then that's where healing can happen, right? That's where a new imprint happens, or a new intention, the future, changing what the future may hold, or the way that path looks. That's where that unlocks, right? Am I following? Let me know, Rocio. Like, I'm, like, for real, like, I'm here as your student. Like, this is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's a fluid state. It's getting the nervous system into a fluid state, because when it's hardened, when it's compromised, right? This is why stress, anxiety exist. And where PTSD has a huge effect on the nervous system and the way that we respond to the world, because the nervous system is like this. It's fluid.
It's tight.
Yeah. you're able to open it up and say, okay, the receptors are open, you're available to receive what's in front and to really assess it from a different perspective versus being in the state and not letting anything in or just holding on to that story somatically in your body. So it's a great opportunity to, like you said, reprint, repattern. It's an immense opportunity to do that. And I'm still fascinated by what happens within, a steaming session or a healing session with vaginal steaming. There's so much that gets involved.
You know what's so interesting is like so the way that I look at um, steam and how it's impacting the menstrual cycle, I look at 7 menstrual cycle imbalances, okay? And I was trying to analyze and figure out which ones steaming for sure, just steam alone can get rid of. And like when it comes to blood deficiency, if somebody's not eating enough, steam alone isn't going to treat that, right? So that's what I was trying to like, actually really analyze and say which one is steam going to do for sure. Even if somebody resists it or did anything they can for it not to do that, let's say, steam is going to be able to impact that. And there's 2. It's stagnation, uterine stagnation. And then the other one is mucus. If there's mucus that's stuck, sticky stuff. So anyways, what I'm saying is stuck. So when you're saying that, like that tight end state, that that holding state, that stressed out state, like there's nothing you can do to be stressed out like when you've steamed. Like it's just like your body is just relaxed, right? The same when you're in water, when you're floating. So I love floating. I've always loved floating ever since I learned how to float when I was 5. I remember the moment I learned how to float. And I do love water. I love water sports. I love being in water all the time. But in particular, I love being able to remove myself from other people and just float. And like how you said, the ears under the water and just stare up at the clouds. Like that's just like something like, if you can find me in that, you can find me doing that. Okay, that's something that I do. All without knowing, about, water healing and what you just said. But I was, recollecting that, oh yeah, like there's something very different about when you're playing at the beach versus when you swim out and just start floating in the water, looking up at the sky, and you can't really, even if you're with other people, that they're not there anymore, right? So with steam, when it comes to the uterus in particular, if somebody's steaming, it does let go of the stagnation. It does clear out the old blood, whether or not they've brought up the conscious, experience that caused that old blood or not. Like once they steam, it's just gonna become loose, and after that next uterine cleanse, that period, more of it is gonna flow out, right? However, people can actually still block it. Like if somebody, like for example, when people use tampons or, they do things when they have their period, a lot of times, like you can find, I found articles where people say that they steam and then their periods were worse afterwards. Like they had worse cramps. And I'm over here trying to understand what's going on. And what I realized is they're using tampons. So they've actually released that stagnation, and then now they're blocking it from coming out. So you actually can fight against the steam releasing the stagnation, but ultimately it's going to release that stagnation no matter what, right? So anyhow, these are some of my reflections from some of the things that you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking about cervical mucus infections too. It's the uterus again in an inflamed state. And so it has mucus to protect itself. That's what all it's doing. It's protecting itself. What a wise ability to say, you know what? There's something going on, but I'm going to do whatever I can. Right? That's why we get mucus when we're sick. It's that the immune system is fighting the infection off. But yeah, it's incredible what can happen with steam alone to be able to release it. Whether you want to do the emotional processing work or not, on a physical level, it's incredible what it does to your body. And this is, at the end of the day, this is really about trusting body wisdom and coming back to that. It's more so that than anything else. There's no other spiritual dimension to this other than that. on the most fundamental like basis, that it's the most important, I think, aspect of this work is to come back to our body, to feel our body, to trust
Mm.
it as a vehicle of how we navigate in life. It's the connection between the brain and listening to the heart, and the heart is connected to the second brain, right, which is such a huge, it has a huge magnetic field that is constantly navigating and engaging with everything inside and around us. So it's such a powerful tool to have. There's nothing more, it doesn't have to be so complicated.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So water is what I've learned today is that water is an incredible tool for emotional processing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that steam is also involved in that. That's also going to be a tool that's helpful for that. Um, I have talked to a lot of people about vaginal steaming all over the world. And I remember learning, I remember talking to, I mentioned Patty Garcia, who's a midwife. I remember talking to her about vaginal steaming, and she shared with me um, that she says her intentions before she does the steam session. And I thought that was really beautiful. Um, and now I'm understanding how, to do that practice before the steam session, it can help. Like, again, the steam is going to release the stagnation no matter what, but go ahead and doing that is going to help to take the water and take the experience from that session even to
Another level.
a higher place, to another level, especially when it comes to using this specifically for healing, right? Or for releasing something traumatic that happened. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the reason why intention setting is so important, why prayer has been so important around the world in different practices. Prayer is just intention setting on some
Right.
level. This is and it's it is something that we recognize as humans, that is innately divine but also very human, that we've gotten away from looking at it from a perspective that is very human versus religious,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that energy, it's about energy, right? Again, relating it to the work of Emoto, when you say something, when you set the intention, you're already creating an imprint. And so if you have that intention in whatever it is that you're doing, then you're going to amplify, you're going to create a container for something else to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where healing can alchemize on, a lot quicker. Even with my water healing sessions, I never, for the most part, the way that I go through that process is that we do an intention setting call and preparation before we do a water session. We don't go into the just like that. There's preparation for that, so that way when we go in there, we know what's the purpose, what are we working with, how do we change
Mm-hmm.
the structure of this water.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beautiful.
Do you do any trainings yourself for people who to teach people how to do this type of session? I know you've done trainings with different schools, but I understand that what you do is unique and that you've brought your own gifts to it. Do you currently, well, you offer sessions. You do offer sessions. Right? What do you offer? Like, what do you offer? People are going to hear this and know how special this is. And they're going to want to,
Right.
be able to find this, right? Because we do work with people, and thank you for sharing about, what you went through as a child, the sexual abuse you went through. As you know, this is something that most of us have lived through, right? And every time somebody does share their experience, they unlock it for other people, right? To be able to move towards healing. So, um, but one thing in particular is that I do have a course for my practitioners to work with people for sexual abuse recovery. And I can't imagine anything that would be more relieving after sexual abuse, whether it was immediate or addressing something that happened in the past than like floating in water. You know, that's probably why I do it. You know,
Yeah.
so what would you say to others um, that are interested specifically in doing this type of emotional work, whether that's for themselves or learning more about doing this for others?
Um, so I just want to reference some information because you talked about floating and how it was innately something that you just knew that it was a place of surrender that you can go into. We also know that. That's the reason why societies around the world have always established themselves near water. One,
Mm,
we need to sustain ourselves with water. But also, there's a book called Blue Mind by Wallace J. Nichols. I followed his work once I came back to the States, and I was like, how am I going to talk about this work? And, you know, he wrote this amazing book, and he started looking at the science and connecting the science and emotions and the impact that it has with people, you know, essentially looking at water, being near water, living near water, playing a water sport, what it does to the brain. So if anyone wants more information about the science behind water, Blue Mind is an immense reference point. But again, it's going back to our our knowledge about water and our connection to water. We know what's good for us. We know that looking at a body of water, being in it, it's gonna take us to a state of intimacy with ourselves. Um, I feel I'm I'm at a stage. I've definitely learned from different practitioners around the world, and I am actually starting to feel more ready to start training people because what I do is unique compared to what other people are doing within the water work. So I feel in the next year I will definitely get more prepared to be able to do that because I know that there's a lot of people that are needing this and need access to this. Um,
yeah,
because there's also not a lot of people doing this work, and I feel
yeah,
that a lot more need to do it. And this needs to be, again, this needs to be water where it can disseminate and go into different avenues, right? And I feel like it's coming. If people want to get into this work a little further, I know that there's Watsu training courses all over the world as well. Um, Again, they're not as common or as frequent as we would like them to be. There's also another layer to this work that is also pretty immense and intense. That's the care and the energy that goes into doing this work is not necessarily easy. It's if not a lot more people I think would be doing it.
hmm,
So there's a process as well, um, and I feel steaming again is an opportunity to engage with this work. But yeah, I would just recommend searching for Watsu classes if you're interested in that and you want to get into that realm. And hopefully by next year, I can also get my gear ready so that I can start training people and do this work because I think it's immense and it needs to happen and more people need to experience what this is. So the other thing that I wanted to say is I work a lot with sound in water, and I've created these like floating sound baths that are immense and incredible. And working in synergy with a group in water is also really powerful. And working with sound in water is powerful as well, just because the resonance of sound and the way that sound is able to transfer or transmute and move in water. That's why the sonar of um, even dolphins and whales, right? The sound can travel a lot deeper distances than it can on air. So feeling the vibration of sound through the body also has another effect on how our nervous system gets rewired, which is another great tool to have in this work. Even using sound in steam sessions is incredible. Again, it's how you're intentionalizing the space. So I just wanted to briefly mention sound because sound is incredible, and it's also next healing, um, I think, modality that is gonna continue. It's already expanding and exploding. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to mention those things.
so you do group floating sessions, and then you also are available for private sessions.
Yes. And retreats. I also do retreats at beautiful hot springs in different parts of California and sometimes internationally as well. So I'm always looking for gems where people can connect to nature and just go deeper with their work. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, so beautiful. I cannot wait to be in the water with you.
Oh,
You are the only person I know personally who's doing this work, you
okay.
know, and um yeah, and you keep on saying the word gem, but you're just like such a gem to the community, you know, and I mean, Rocio, like the levels that you take it to, honestly, like I have to study this just to be able to form my questions. But I'm going to leave it at that. What is the website where people can get in contact with you?
It's rocionavarro.org. And my
Okay, perfect.
Instagram is water_healing. So you can follow me, those two. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, honestly. It's a great pleasure to be here with you and everybody else. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Of course. Okay.